A warm welcome to all on behalf of the Bookwalis. It is said that reading and writing are connected. We asked a few children's book authors, and one thing that came unanimously out of all of them is how books and stories were vital childhood companions and key ingredients to their becoming an author. The book, uh, the book we will talk about today, The Middle, it beautifully captures through pictures and words the journey of a girl, Azma. It captures how, in the beginning, with her as an insatiable reader, and what she goes through, and how it ends with her becoming a contemplative writer. The discoveries, the challenges, the revelations that she braved through, that she encountered through this soul searching quest, if we can say so. To talk about the book today, we have with us its award winning author and picture book enthusiast, Richa Jha. Richa is the founder and the publisher at Peculiar Books, which is an independent publishing house for children's picture book. Have won many prestigious national and international awards. So, over to you, Richa. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Shruti. Thanks for having me here. And before we begin, a big congratulations to all four of you at Bookwalis, at the Bookwalis. The phenomenal work. I mean, I keep talking about it with everyone. The kind of work that you are doing is awe-inspiring. So let's keep at it.
The first very obvious question is this an autobiography of sorts? Is it your story? Is it is it you in there? And when did you really know that you wanted to write? And
autobiographical, any book that any author writes, there'll be bits and pieces of their own life in it at some point, in some one way or another. So it's not as if this is completely my story, but bits of it, yes, because I guess it's the journey that all the writers undertake, and it typically does usually begin with reading a lot and then therefore going on and becoming a reader. That does not mean that every reader will end up becoming a writer, or that every writer needs to necessarily be a reader, but I think the second one is more there. To become a writer, you've got to be a bit of a reader, yes. So autobiographical, bits of this story are, for instance, her that entire thing about the night, the how she keeps up at night, and how things trouble her, and the monsters in her head and all that. A lot of it, yes, was definitely there when I was growing up. And I remember keeping up till very, very late, till the late hours of the night, and standing there at a window, just staring out, wondering how many other people are awake at that hour. And I remember at 2 o'clock, at 3 o'clock, I would see maybe a truck pass. I grew up in Dhanbad, which had a lot of these truck movements happening overnight. And that would give me a lot of reassurance that, okay, there is somebody out there who's driving the truck, may not be there for long, but that person is there. And so there was some sort of a fear inside me, definitely, at that point. I can't describe it. I can't describe what it was. So that is something that I tried to capture in this book, yes.
Okay.
Also, my entire journey of becoming an author. I wouldn't say a writer, because I've been writing forever, it seems. I mean, I go back to writing ever since I was in school. So that's not, that really wasn't a new thing for me. But becoming an author definitely was. I don't believe in astrology at all, and this is not something I've shared with anything, Jyoti, anyone. Okay, uh, I don't believe in astrology and all these mumbo jumbo at all. But I remember when I was in college, I did go to Hanuman Mandir once. Okay, and remember outside the Hanuman Mandir, I'm not sure if there are still people. I'm talking about Hanuman Mandir in Delhi CP, and
Okay.
there are these. I'm sure they're all. I mean, they're so-called palmists or whatever, who sit there
Yes.
outside that. And I remember walking up to one of them one day and asking them, mera haath dekhiye and tell me if I'll ever become an author or not. And it's just one of those things. I don't know. It's not as if. Uh, so yeah, at some level, it must have been there inside me.
So, so you knew, right? You knew you want to write.
I knew I wanted to write books. I mean, as I said, I was a freelance writer I've been a freelance writer for many years now, almost 3 decades. So that wasn't the concern. The thing was more to do with writing a book.
And how did picture books come into the whole?
Sorry, how did?
Picture books happen. So you read a lot, you wrote a lot, but how did the whole picture book?
Oh, the picture book thing. No, that is a very, very personal mommy sort of a journey for me. Because so there are two stages of my picture book indulgence, so to speak. One was when I was growing up. Obviously, we didn't have these kind of picture books at all. But I would buy a lot of books from Calcutta Book Fair. I would go there from Dhanbad to Calcutta to buy. My annual haul would happen there, and there we would get a lot of those gorgeous Russian illustrated books and all that, which was beautifully done. So as a form of books, the illustrated books has always captivated me in that sense. And in one form or the other, I've always kept them with me wherever I go. So each time I move house, or when I went from my house to the hostel, I carried those books with me because I wanted them to be close to me. So in some form, I guess that illustrated thing was a very strong influence that was there. That was the first part of my influence. The second was when I became a mother for the first time. So my son was born in 2001, and I remember we were in Bombay at that time. Just even before he was born, I remember going to the Strand Book Fair. They have their annual the fair that they have, and going and buying a lot of books for him, even when he wasn't born. And that, I think, pushed me on to this entire journey of picture book love. I mean, one look at those new, and at that time in India, we didn't really have too many of those. So we had a little bit of Kara, we had a little bit of Tulika, though those were not the ones that were present there. So I would buy a lot of the ones that were coming in internationally. And that sort of, I think, set me in for this entire journey. I still remember every single book that I bought for my son and the way I fell in love with them first. And therefore, I keep telling the parents, of young children, if you want your children to read, fall in love with those books first, and that love will automatically move on to your children. So you won't really have to work hard at making them love books. So and gradually, over the years, therefore, I've kept in touch with picture books, and I kept reading out picture books to my children even when they got older. So first my son, then my daughter. It was just one of those things. I just fell in love with that entire format of books. And at some point, I felt I wanted to write them.
So talking of, picture books, right? Illustrations are everything.
Yes.
They lead and they take the story forward. So in the middle, what really are these night creatures? What are they?
That's something that Eva will be able to answer the best. But I'll tell you a little bit about how this whole thing about the night creatures and all came out. And because we were having this chat, today, Jyoti, I sat through those tens and tens of mails that got exchanged between Eva and me when we were working on this book. And I was wondering how, because now it's been like 3 years since the work started on this book first time and all that. And I kind of forgotten how this whole thing came about. And
Okay.
the best part about this book is that because Eva was in Spain and I was here in India, all the conversation that we had around this book happened through emails. So this is probably one of those very few books where everything is sort of documented. All the conversations that we had around books and around the illustrations. And I'll just read out. So what I've done is I've just taken a printout of some of those emails. If it's okay, maybe I'll just read them out.
Yes, sure.
Okay. So the very first mail that I sent her with the story, I mean, we were in touch even before that, and I knew that I had to do a book with her. But finally, when I had this story, I was very excited, and I sent her this story saying, okay, finally, I think there's a story which I would like to share with you, which would go very well with your style. And in that story, I write, here's the story I thought I'd shared with you. It's about a girl named Azma. And within brackets, I've read, though I visualize her more as an animal, which is also why I feel you're the best person to be doing this, because I love the way you bring out the emotions in animals. And she's absolutely brilliant with the way she does it, her animal creatures and all that. And then this Azma is a voracious reader, but there are also many questions that arise in her mind when she reads. Those questions, doubts, and uncertainties trouble her at night, which is why she's scared of the dark. So there were these two elements that I was trying to bring in. One was the uncertainty in her mind because she wasn't getting the answers through the books that she was reading. And second was that those uncertainties, I wanted to somehow, somewhere connect with her fear of the dark. So there were these two elements coming in. And then I go on to describe the story to her. And I wrote to her, it's still in its very, very early stages. I don't even have a name for it yet. Okay. And we go, etc., etc. And then, so this was a mail that I wrote to her on 14th of February, 2017. Okay. 2 days, and after which she immediately responded and we got on talking about this book and all that. And 2 days later, I wrote to her saying, okay, in my earlier mail, I wrote that I visualize her as an animal. But now I think it will be wiser to have her as a girl because we will have to show all kinds of other animals and creatures that she imagines in the dark. Okay. So, I mean, when you asked me about the creatures, I really don't know how this thought would have come about in my mind about having these scary creatures in the dark. Okay, so at some point, I'm sure it must have been my own childhood fears that I wanted portrayed in some form and getting maybe manifested as these really menacing sort of creatures. And the best part was that, and there were two parts to the creatures that I had thought. One was the scary bits, which is what Eva took it so beautifully to a completely altogether different sort of level. I mean, it's out there. It's sublime. The second thing I wanted to do was that when she's reading, so the first couple of pages where we are showing her as a voracious reader, I wanted her, those little say characters from literature. Those classic characters from literature showing up because that's what she's consumed with and consumed by all day and all night. But that somehow we, at some point, we decided to do away with because we felt it's going to be very, very confusing. So the characters, the classic, the book characters sort of went away and only the night creatures remained through that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So, so the transformation at the beginning, you portray them as regular animals like that we see, or is it that we see in the day, and then there is a transformation as the story progresses. What is so that I must tell you is completely Eva's imagination. The way so I left it at that point that, okay, there have to be these scary creatures and night creatures and all that, which she called night monsters and I call them creatures as we progressed. But the way she has shown that transformation is entirely her imagination. So, what she's done is that if we look at it carefully, we'll see that initially these creatures are shown as being very, very they're almost ignorant, so to speak, because they are not the ones being shown with books at all. It's only Azma being shown with books Yeah.
All right, but these creatures seem to have nothing to do with the books at all. Okay, and
Yes.
that's the ignorance that's there. One part of it is ignorance, the other part of it is that vagueness about now not having enough answers yet. Okay, so those two parts are being connected. All right, and as we progress through the book, you'll see that the creatures start getting scarier and
Yeah.
more and more threatening, menacing, and that's where the turmoil is happening inside. So as we progress through Azma's growing insecurity and growing unrest inside her mind, is how the creatures also get more and more. I mean, they get darker and darker, so to speak. And in the end, you will see that they are almost sort of domesticated, and that this domesticated is a word that Eva used in one of her emails when we were discussing it. All right, and that's her vision of it. So you'll see that on the second last page, we actually have the creatures sitting with the books properly. Yes, and they're quiet, and they are the ones, and their eyes speak about how engrossed they are in those same books that they weren't even picking up earlier when Azma was sitting and reading them. So that's the journey, and that's the calm that's showing inside her head, and that's how the night creatures have also got quietened, and there is an overall peace inside her now, because she knows that the answers to all her questions lie in her writing them down. Writing them down as a book. So it's a beautiful, metaphorical, and it's at so many layers that this book unpeels. It sort of peels itself. Each time I see it, and that's all because of what Eva has done to it.
Imagine if that's what it's doing to you. Imagine if, what it will do to a reader.
Yes.
So this yellow paper.
Okay. Yeah.
In the middle of the night.
Yes.
What does that? What is that metaphorically spent in your life, or a book you read?
So see that. Okay, I'll tell you. See, even initially when we were discussing about the way the illustrations would come about, Eva had sent me some initial, what do we call it? Iterations of how she would see the monsters and all that, and they were done in beautiful color pencils, as in they were done in pencils but colored and all that. And I remember sitting with them, looking at them, staring at them in awe on my screen when the email came. And I don't know, it was just that one little flash somewhere which felt, okay, how about we do this entire book in black and white? With just that occasional splash of one single color somewhere. Okay, yellow was not a color that came to my mind at all. The color that came to my mind was red. Okay, and that too maybe just occasional splashes here and there, and not as if a lot of it. And I remember writing to Eva saying, okay, I mean the colors are looking beautiful, but how about we do it in a monochrome sort of thing? So just black and white, and we don't look at color at all except those occasional sort of red. I didn't put the color there. I just said occasional color. And she immediately took to it, and she said, okay, let me try. And the next time she shared those illustrations, she sent them as complete black and white.
Okay.
And they were gorgeous. I mean, out of the world, really beautiful. And in a couple of them, she had just put this little yellow screen. So this, and the rest of it is all hand done, of course, with pencil. The yellow is a digitally done thing.
Okay.
Because she said that if she feels it's going to be nicer that way. Let me see if I have something in the email about why she chose yellow.
Okay.
Her thing about yellow was also, she had a very specific thing in her mind when she chose yellow. I mean, again, that yellow is showing the turmoil that the girl is going through, and at each step, so it's largely to do with. Okay, I'll show it. So here, initially, when you see, the yellow is showing only inside the book.
That's right.
Okay. Everything is black and white. Okay. As we progress, there are several things that are happening, and when we reach the end of the book, we see that. We don't see the pages of the books, of course, but everything else has been updated. All right.
Very interesting.
In her mind, the way she was trying to show was that, it's that entire movement again from ignorance, or I wouldn't say ignorance, from not having those solid answers, to finally moving to a state where you have the answers. And therefore, that yellow is coming in, jumping out finally from the books and on to the rest of her world around Asma's, whatever world it is.
You mentioned about a lot of reading ahead of writing.
Yeah.
What happens in between, in the middle, really? So what happens from the reading to the writing? So, and probably,
so I can tell you about my reading to writing thing. And I'll tell you very specifically in the context of, say, picture books.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the more I read picture books is the more I feel almost compelled to write something of my own, right? So in between that entire process is a huge gap where the mind is very actively churning out stuff, at least for me. So it's not as if there's a direct correlation between me reading a book or reading, say, 50 books and then therefore coming up with a story. It's just that, maybe a thought that gets triggered when you're reading a very good book. All right. And it's not even an idea as such. It's just a thought maybe that gets triggered. And that starts brewing inside my mind. And it just keeps getting bigger and firmer and gets to a point where I feel, okay, now I can maybe sit and put those sentences or those phrases on paper. But there's a huge gap between that. It's like at times it could be years, at times it could be months, but there's always that little thing that I have. And I would have read, I don't know, thousands and thousands of picture books now over the years. And sadly, unfortunately, now is when I should be reading even more, but I'm not able to do that. I don't know, for some reason, I'm just not able to read more books. I don't know what's happened to me. I mean, I'm not able to focus on the words at all now. It's that phase of my not being able to read. I don't know what's happened to me. It will come back, but...
Talking of that, has being a writer and a publisher changed you as a reader? Other than not having time to read? Other than not having the time to read?
Yes. So I'll tell you, yes. How it has changed me is that now I'm very mindful of what I'm reading. And because therefore I have to look at, I'm now, I would say, very conscious of a few things when I'm reading, which is not necessarily a very helpful way of reading, because, then there are too many riders that you're putting into your reading experience, which is, it's no longer that seamless sort of joy that you can draw from a book, which is the sad thing which has happened. So several things now, because because I'm a publisher, because I'm an author, because I'm an editor and also an art director at times, when I'm like talking to some illustrators, it's I'm looking at so many different aspects of the book that has gone into making it a good book. So it will be maybe the way page turns have been used, maybe the way the sentences have been used, maybe the way the illustration is complementing the words on a page, and so on and so forth. I mean, those are the technical things that I now look at. So it's really changed me in that sense as a reader, and I don't think I'm enjoying this at all. I would do anything to go back to a phase where I was reading it without any writing, completely.
Do you go on research trips really to draw inspiration?
No, never.
Okay.
Never at all. Most of the ideas that have come to me for the books that I've done have all been very instinctive. So I have never looked out in that sense for any inspiration. Never.
So, is it that you, as part of your writing, you end up sharing a lot of yourself out there? Maybe some things that are very private
Yes.
also.
Yes. I think a lot of my own fears end up coming onto the books, onto the pages of the books, in one form or the other. The joys also, but I think it's a lot. Or maybe my fears, or the fears that have seen my children grow up with, or I see some other children who are very close to me, or some people who are close to me. So I mean, I find them all to be an extension of myself in that sense, even my very very close friends. So yeah, it's there.
And what's your favorite place to read, or the day to read? When?
No, I can read anytime. That's not a problem.
Okay.
My favorite place has always been my bed.
Okay.
It's the most reassuring part of I think my home sort of thing. It's always a very strange sort of posture that I have when I'm reading.
Okay.
The position is like I'm lying on my tummy. So there are two. Either the book is in front of me, and I'm bent over. Either that, or the book is on the floor. I am on the bed, and I am sort of bent over from that height and looking down and reading at the book. And it's always been like that. I have created a very cozy sort of reading corner in my, like, as part of one of the rooms, but I never see myself sitting there at all. I sit there for everything else, but finally, when it comes to a book, I am finally back with my cushions and my a lot of soft toys also. My daughter and I are crazy about soft toys, and that's one little I would say indulgence that I still have. So at any given point in time, I'll have at least two soft toys, plush toys around me when I'm reading. And if they're not there, then my daughter, if she walks in and she sees me reading, and she sees that something is missing, she'll come and make sure that she gets them onto me in some form or the other. So it's almost like a pet, an inanimate pet that keeps changing at all times. Sometime it'll be this, the other time it'll be that. So that's where I do.
And is that why the animal creatures became part of the book naturally? Because I earlier thought it was Eva's idea.
No, the animal creatures, the creatures of the so as I said, I mean, I was completely blank about this whole thing. I'm telling you, I mean, there's so much of me that went inside this book in a way. I had completely, and I keep telling people, I've completely blanked out in that sense. I don't remember a lot of the process that went into making this book. But thanks to you, I sat through all those chats, those emails, and so now I see that the first draft that I wrote did have that little art note saying, okay, night creatures, etc., etc. The form they finally took was all Eva's, of course, but the thought about night creatures was there in my mind.
Tell us about the dedications in your book.
Okay.
You have your husband there, you have a lady who runs a bookstore, and of course the third one is the bookwali who runs the book club.
Yes, so let me see what I have written about in my dedication. Ek to na, I enjoy the dedications of my books. I mean, I put some thought. I definitely put a lot of thought behind who I want to dedicate it to. And this one didn't really. So when I initially started off by dedicating it to my husband, and it says to Shraman, who's my husband, who made me listen to the itch and the gnaw and the poundings in my core, and the words are from the book itself. The entire thing. Who made me listen to the itch and the gnaw and the poundings in my core. I mean, this entire sentence is from the middle itself. Why that? Because Shraman is the one who has constantly been pushing me towards writing. I wouldn't say, yeah, I mean, more than writing, it's also been some sort of a creative pursuit. So I was in a corporate job uh, quite some time back, and he kept always telling me, okay, look, you're good at writing. I mean, I don't see why between the two of us, one of us will end up having to do that dirty job all the day, I mean, all the time. And if you are the creative person, why don't you take the plunge and, sort of just get into something creative rather than selling and, doing all this, uh, sales and marketing and those kind of things and all that. It initially, I remember not liking it at all and having a lot of fights, etc., with him, a lot of tension. But by and by, I realized that I really wasn't made for that kind of a thing at all. I wasn't made for that corporate world. And once I realized it was a no-brainer for me. I mean, the day it sort of finally set into my mind is the day I finally went ahead and quit that corporate thing. And since then, I've been writing in one form or another. And always, my husband has been telling me, I'll wait for the day when you write a book which is so cryptic, which is so it has so many layers that people will be left wondering what you were trying to write. Okay. He said,
Okay.
I mean, he's always told me in all these years. So when I finally came up with this book, I felt, okay, finally, I think I have that book. And therefore, I dedicated it to him because,
How sweet.
it was always there. So that's one part of it. The second is, of course, Sangeeta Mehta Bhansali, who has been such an anchor. I mean, such a book anchor for me, a creative anchor for me throughout my picture book journey. So I remember the first two books that I didn't know Sangeeta or Kahani Tree at all at that time. And this I'm talking about 2011. Okay, 11, 12, sometime 13 or maybe something like that. I didn't know. Bijal was the one who mentioned Kahani Tree to me. So I think I will be eternally grateful to Bijal in that sense for letting me know that there's something like this in Bombay. So when I did my first two books on my own, so I self-published the Susu Pals and Unboy Boy. Those two books, once they were ready, I was connecting with a whole host of booksellers, retailers in India. And I remember sending the PDF of these two books to Sangeeta, introducing myself and saying, okay, look, I've done these books. Would you be interested in keeping them at Kahani Tree? And I sent out my email at night. And when I woke up in the morning, and I was in Nigeria at that time, we were living in Nigeria and he was in Bombay. There was a gap of just a few hours between, like, the time gap and all that. So within a few hours, I got a mail and I haven't experienced such joy at receiving an email the way I did that day when I saw Sangeeta's mail. And she was, I won't read out the email, but I'm telling you, that excitement that she showed through that mail just sort of reaffirmed my faith in myself. And she loved the Susu Pals. She said, again, maybe someday we'll hear it from her itself. Okay, so the way she sort of just embraced my first two titles and every other title, after that, it just and she's the one person I go to each time I do a new book. Before I show it to others, I share it with her and she gives me her feedback. And I keep my fingers crossed. I almost know instantly whether she likes the book or she doesn't like the book. And I just know it. It's that instinctive sort of feeling from the amount of time that she takes to respond, or the first sentence of her reply, etc. just tells me whether it's a yes or a no. Okay. It's been more yeses than no's, but I must tell you there have also been no's. And trust me that the books where she has had her no's are the ones which really haven't done well at all. Okay, so so therefore that blind trust that I have in her judgment is that one thing. And she's always told me that the kind of faith she's had in me. It sort of, she's always told me that you'll do a book like this. So obviously, again, the day I did this book, I had to dedicate it to her. And Archana Atri, what do I say about her? She's again one of those very few people in this world now whose judgment I absolutely. She's like all the writers usually will have an ideal reader.
Yeah.
Not many will tell you that they have one, but we all have that, and we're always constantly wanting to please that one writer. So for me, of course, Sangeeta is one of them, but Archana has also now become my ideal reader, and I now go to her for every small, big, little thing, whenever anything to do with books. So when I shared this book with her, it was again her response was of a completely different order altogether, and within minutes she sent me so many different ways in which she was interpreting the book. I said, okay, let me stop and let me pause and at least take everything in, because I haven't, in my mind, I would never have interpreted this story in so many ways. Okay, so and therefore, like within seconds, I knew this book had to be dedicated to Archana as well, because she's the one who, for the first time, told me that she was the first one who told me that there are so many different ways in which you can interpret this story, and she's the one who told me, okay, this book works, woman. Don't have any doubts about it.
Yeah. That gets me to the next question. In terms of, in an earlier interview, you'd mentioned how, because of its cryptic, open-ended, esoteric nature, it was you thought it was meant only for a niche market, and you wanted to restrict the prints and but eventually you got to chose to put it out there. So what really changed?
So again, So again,
did that.
Again, both Sangeeta's response and Archana's response was a very important. There were key elements to my key inputs to me in terms of whether the books would work or not. So you see, I was getting the feedback from. I got the feedback from 4 sets of people. One was Sangeeta as a bookseller, as a retailer who's so much in love with picture books herself. And she told me this book works. Okay. Archana told me as a reader, as my ideal reader, so as a reader, and also as somebody who runs a book club, who's constantly with children. So I know that she knows how the mind of a reader works. Okay. She told me, yes, it works. Go ahead with a lot. And to each of them, I would pose the question: do you think I should settle in for just a very small number, or can I do it like on a larger print run? So I got then I was in touch with Swati and Venkatesh at Bookaroo, and the reason I was in touch with them for this particular title was because I wanted to launch this at Bookaroo last year. Eva was to be coming to Delhi for the launch and all that, right? So she was doing her sessions. So it was imperative for me that I kept Swati and Venkatesh in the loop, because their feedback would have also told me how many copies to do. And I was at that time thinking, I remember telling Swati and Venkatesh that I'll do only 50 copies so that your Bookaroo is covered, and I don't expect to more than 50 copies to sell throughout both the Delhi and the Bhopal Bookaroo, put together, because Eva was going to Bhopal as well. So I'm not going to be doing more than 50 copies. And both of them kept saying, don't be crazy. Go ahead and do more, right? So that was the best. And then I remember sharing this book also with Manjari Chakravarti, the fabulous illustrator, okay?
Yes.
The PDF form of this. And she also said, no, I think it's going to work commercially, just go ahead. So, these 4 different inputs, and after that, I didn't really think. I had my eyes from the 4 sort of very, very discerning sort of readers, and I just went ahead with it after that.
So I'm so glad you chose to do that, and
No, it happened at the last minute. I'd already the printers had the instruction to go in for those 50 copies and all that. And, because of my last minute instruction to change it to from a digital order to an offset order, there was a lot of chaos that happened in the process. Those 2-3 days were quite bad for me. Bad in the sense like they ended up being very, very hectic, because I had to change a lot of things because the format was changing and all that.
So the mouse like creature that Azma chose to mount in the end.
Yeah.
I went back and I saw it was the same creature that handed the pen over.
Yes.
Did that mean something in terms of the?
So that's again completely Eva's understanding of how she wanted the inspiration to come to her. You remember the creature that's handing over the pen to her is again in the midst of all the other creatures that are there, and they are the ones who are roaring and bellowing and scaring her with all the dark, their big eyes and all that. But the moment everything quietens down and she starts hearing that inner voice, the really deep voice within, is when the other creatures also quieten down. And from amongst the same set of creatures is this one big creature that it's almost like a giant sized thing that is coming. So it's a way of showing that it's actually the inspiration is coming from within. And that is the one that's handing over the pen to her and saying, go ahead and write. I mean, this is what you have to do. This is where you'll find your answers. And it's the same one that she mounts and she rides later, and as she goes ahead and rules, as the sentence says. What is it? And then Azma steps out and rules. Yeah. So that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for reminiscing through the whole making of the middle, telling us the inside stories. It was really so nice talking to you.
No, Jyoti, thank you so much for doing this with me, because it's brought back so many of those layers and those memories back in me as well. As I said, I mean, I was going through all those emails and I was flooded with all those wonderful thoughts here.
Yes.